Amityville Horror from 1979 is based on J. Anson's same-named novel from 1977. About the allegedly true experiences of a family who were driven out of their new home in the real Amityville in 1975 by alleged paranormal events, in which a year earlier, unfortunately also real, 6 people were murdered, which served as a kind of template for the sequel/prequel 3 years later and its remake in 2018. Stuart Rosenberg's R-rated American haunted house classic had a budget of $4.7 million and made it, despite mostly mixed to negative reviews, almost 20 times alone in the US back, becoming one of the most commercially successful independent movies of all time. Also worth mentioning is the eerie music by Lalo Schifrin, who also scored the sequel. George and Kathleen Lutz and their 3 children move into a new house near Amityville, which they have bought at an extremely low price because one of the previous residents has gone mad and shot his entire family. But as soon as they move in, all sorts of strange things start happening. Doors and windows slam shut and seem to block themselves. Swarms of flies keep appearing at a window. The local priest gets violently ill during a visit after he also hears voices like the residents, and later also a nun runs away shortly after entering. The husband exhibits increasingly aggressive and strange behavior, seems somehow sickly and constantly irritable. The front door flies off its hinges and they discover a room in the basement that apparently belonged to an insane asylum. On the last night, George attacks his wife with an axe. Walls begin to bleed and the family leaves the house for good in another ghost attack after the husband, trying to save the dog, almost sinks into an old well under the floor. Amityville Horror is, from today's perspective, a fairly harmless ghost story with an ingeniously presented iconic house as the antagonist, whose windows look like eyes, and not a bad movie, but not really good either, with a few excitingly edited minutes at the beginning during the house tour, the only dreamt gore scenes in the middle, and the relatively exciting final. Interestingly, with the father's slow transformation into the axe-wielding previous inhabitant, it anticipates some elements and scenes from The Shining, which appeared a year later. But everything in between feels like it drags along at a snail's pace. Even back then, I found it pretty boring for most of the 2-hour runtime. And in contrast to earlier real horror movies like Psycho, whose killer theme was bluntly stolen for some scenes here, The Exorcist or The Omen, with this I never felt the need to rewatch it. 1982's Amityville 2: The Possession is based on Hans Holzer's Murder in Amityville from 1979. It is about the murdered family mentioned in the first part, a disgustingly unsympathetic family-beating father with his wife and children who lived there before. Here too, after they move in, the house begins to affect them with the already known methods, like moving windows and doors, bleeding taps and walls, a plague of flies, icy draughts of wind, moving inventory, voices, etc. Especially the son, who during the story, in which it also emerges that the house similar to Poltergeist that appeared 2 months earlier is located in a cursed Indian cemetery, becomes possessed by an evil demon, behaves increasingly aggressively and strangely, including incest with his sister, and that's just what they left in, and shoots everyone at the 2/3 mark. And again there is a priest who can't stop the events, but now escapes in the last third with the possessed man with the help of the prison warden and performs a special effects exorcism. The faster paced prequel with similar costs and reviews as part 1, to be precise a little more expensive and slightly worse rated, made just 2.5 times its budget in the US back. So more of a moderate success and no hit by any stretch. The Italian screenwriter and director Damiano Damiani, to many people better known for his excellent socio-critical, political and mafia thrillers, including the most famous Italian TV series The Octopus from 1984. Amityville 2 is, at least in the first hour, technically on a much more professional level than its predecessor. Some camera movements and shots remind of The Evil Dead. Nevertheless, it shamelessly exploits the authentic tragedy in the first half, and the character of the priest in particular seems so contrived that it almost hurts. The last third is just uninteresting filler that drags on endlessly and seems like an embarrassingly desperate parody of The Exorcist. Who the hell cares if the killer is freed from the evil spirit? To then serve his 5 life sentences as a cured man? What a bunch of crap. Amityville 3D came out the following year, in the course of the short-lived 1982-83 3D revival, in which several franchises suddenly rushed out a second sequel as Part 3D, which, by the way, are all terrible, with embarrassingly silly in-your-face effects, and had to be 2D converted for the TV and video version anyway, which meant that their only interesting aspects went lost. In this bore with a sleeping pill in the lead, the spooky house in Amityville is sold to the freshly divorced reporter John Baxter, who moves in with his daughter after having put a stop to a couple of frauds who have settled there with their ghost show. At first he doesn't believe in the horror stories. The 6 original murders are also mentioned, and not the 5 from the last part. Only when an acquaintance dies in a strange way and his daughter drowns in the lake, which prompts his ex to stay in the house because she saw her daughter's wet ghost, Baxter turns to a parapsychologist. Eventually they discover a portal to hell in the basement. The Snorefest only just made its $6 million budget in the US back, so it was a flop, and shamelessly makes use of the idea with the photographs that suggest the way a person dies from the much better Omen. The strange deaths themselves also remind of the Omen series. The house now also seems to have an infinite range, and at the end it turns with the paranormal TV team completely into a poor man's poltergeist, where here the house explodes in the final instead of imploding like with the theft victim. Richard Fleischer had actually been a very good Oscar-winning director since the 1940s and had created, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, The Fantastic Voyage and Soylent Green, ingenious visionary classics which are still among my all-time favorites. His ones from the 80s, on the other hand, were not that great, to say the least. After Empty Script 3D, also produced by Dino De Laurentiis, who put for Fleischer, which is German and means, by the way, butcher, more franchises on his chopping block, came Conan 2, the all-hope for Part 3 destroyer, and Birgit Nielsen cosplays Red Sonja. More on these turds in the Conan Swan Song.
Songs about happiness, moment and dreams, and we both of us knew how the end always is. How the end always is.
2005 saw the release of the last film in the series to have a regular theatrical run. For the direct-to-video, streaming, trashcan, etc., see Cub vs. Amityville. Andrew Douglas, The Amityville Horror, with the addition A True Story, so a complete lie, is a remake by Michael Bay's infamous franchise demolition company Platinum Dunes. See also Not a Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010. The same frame story is now set in a much larger house, which is now also totally secluded. And instead of suspense and the rather subtle horror of the original, the focus is here on showing, through constant hallucinations, dreams, visions, fake-outs, etc. and action. With lots of new inventions such an Indian spirit, a bathtub attack, a hairy boat incident, walks and chases on the rooftop, a collection of coffins, even with labeling, and constant jump scares, even if they don't make any sense. Like with the made-up ghost girl who keeps hanging around, hanging herself, even though she was shot with her family in the introduction. Also, in this version, the dog dies at the hand of the father, who then constantly hears phantom barking. And the priest only turns up at the end for the CGI fly number. All the rest of his plot from the original, with the car accident, the church fuss, him going blind, is missing. The wildly coupled together horror cliché collection rightly received mostly negative reviews, but still made worldwide more than 5 times its $19 million budget back.